guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be learning how to join all of our Bake Shop blanket series squares. So this video is just going to show you the joining method that I used. You can use any method that you prefer, but this is how I joined my Bake Shop squares. Now the first thing you want to do is arrange all of your squares how you want them to appear in the blanket. I do have a post over on my blog, and I'll link in the description for how many of each square and how many squares of the solid colored granny squares I made. So go ahead and make sure that you've made all of those and then arrange them however you'd like. I made sure that none of the same two color were touching each other. I just wanted to be sure that it looked kind of random as far as color goes. So you want to go ahead and take that first row on top and stack them from left to right so that your far left square is on top. So here is the stack I made in the order that I have them in. I would snap a picture with your phone of your layout before you start stacking things up, just to make sure that you have everything in the right order as you go. So here we have our first horizontal row stacked. You're going to grab the first two on the top and you can set aside the rest of them. So here they are. That mint green one should be on the left, whatever your far left square is, and you want to put these back to back. I also recommend going ahead and weaving in all of your ends before you get to this point. I didn't do that and it made things a little bit tougher for me. So I'm using white Vanna's Choice for my join all the way around this blanket. It took me about 2 skeins of white just to do the join, so make sure that you have enough. And we're going to get this yarn joined onto our pink motif square. So whatever square is on the right, basically, when it's all laid out, is where you want to join. You're going to chain 3, and then we're going to work in that other corner of the other square, the back square there, and we're going to work 3 double crochets. So basically what we're doing is we're joining these squares using the same side cluster granny stitches that we did working around the motifs or in those traditional granny squares. So now we're going to work back in that front square, the pink square, and work 3 double crochets in that next stitch. Do not chain 1 in between. I know that after you've made a lot of these granny squares, you're used to 3 double crochets and chaining 1, but do not chain in between. So there's 3 double crochets there, and then we're going to work in the back block and work 3 double crochets in that next chain space. Make sure that you're not skipping any chain spaces here. I'm working only in the chain spaces, not in any of the actual stitches themselves. So you're just going to alternate this, working from basically the front block and the back block. And what this is going to do is this is going to join the squares. It's going to look a little lopsided until you get the entire blanket put together. It'll look a little wonky, but don't let that worry you. So here we are just working in the back block. You're just going to continue alternating this, and we're going to follow this exact same method for all of the squares basically. So in that stack that you have of your first horizontal row, once you've worked all the way down, we can see how that's looking there, alternating front and back. Once you've worked all the way down and we've finished off, we're going to just turn that front square into the back and take our next one in the stack and do the exact same thing and continue on, so on and so forth. So here we are coming to the bottom, always working 3 double crochets and alternating. Make sure to go slow the first couple of times you do this, just to be sure that you're not skipping any of those chain spaces, because it will throw things off. Now here we are coming to the end, so you should wind up with your front block, that pink block, being working in that corner first. You're going to still go ahead and work your 3 double crochets, and then when you go to alternate and you're working in that back block corner, you're just going to do 1 double crochet, and then you can go ahead and finish off your yarn. If you remember at the top of this little line of joining stitches, we only chained 3 and then went ahead and alternated blocks. So basically this is just evening that out where you only have 1 stitch. So now you can unfold that and see how it should look. I know that it doesn't look perfectly even, but it shouldn't. When we stitch all of our rows together, that will kind of correct itself. So don't worry about that right now. So now we're going to grab the next block in our stack, and we're going to sandwich these together backs to back. And we're going to repeat the exact same process. So we've finished off our yarn, and we're going to start again, and we're going to join in that front block's corner. Make sure that everything is facing the right way. Make sure that none of your motif blocks are sideways or upside down or anything like that. Make sure to just go slow here and double check how you're positioning things. Make sure you're stitching backs to back. You don't want to wind up with some of your fronts facing front and some of your backs facing back, just because with these granny squares that are worked in the round, you can definitely tell the front from the back, and especially those big shot motif squares, you definitely don't want those backwards. So just be sure to take your time. So here we've stitched our chain 3, and then we're working our 3 double crochets in that back block corner, and then we're just alternating. And go ahead and continue this for the entire row. So go ahead and add on each block for that whole stack, and I'll catch up with you after you've stitched all of those blocks together. So here you can see how this first row looks all stitched together. Now we want to go ahead and do the exact same thing with our second row. Go ahead and stack up from left to right and go ahead and stitch all of them together. So here we have row 1 and row 2. And now we're going to go over how to stitch your rows together. We're going to follow the exact same method. We're just going to work the other way. So I want to be sure how to teach you guys how to position this so that everything lines up and there's no confusion. So go ahead and join your yarn on your second row in that far right top corner and work your chain 2. Now we're going to position these back to back as if we were doing our 2 smaller squares. Just think of this as the same thing. And now we're going to work our 3 double crochets in that corner of our, we're going to say our first row, that top row. So there is 3 double crochets, and then we're going to alternate and come to that second row and work in the next chain space. And working 3 double crochets as always. So for the most part, joining your rows is going to be very much the same as joining your individual squares. It's just going to take you a bit longer because you're working all the way down that row, not just in those 8 or 10 little spots joining the 2 squares. So you can see how this should look getting started. You may have noticed that when I joined my yarn here for the rows, I knotted it and joined it by tying a knot in that first corner stitch on that second row. I wound up doing that for all of my joining all the way down. I just feel like it would give a little bit more of a secure bind. I know that there are a lot of crocheters that don't necessarily love knotting their yarn. They prefer just starting to crochet and then weaving in their ends. But I wanted to be absolutely sure that this did not come apart, so I don't mind the knot. When you weave in your ends, you can't really see it, and I don't mind that method of joining. So that's how I start my yarn. So you're going to be starting and finishing new working yarn for each row. So be sure that however you are joining your yarn at the beginning of the row, however you choose to do it is secure. So as we go down this first set of blocks here, we are alternating as usual. But when we get to the point where the first kind of row working across those join stitches, you can see those white joining stitches that we did. It does get a little bit confusing in this area just because there are lots of little spots to work into. So here you just want to be sure that you're going into every chain space. So if we're looking at this, that there is a chain space from that chain 3 that we did at the beginning of our joining row. You want to make sure to work 3 double crochets in there, as well as in the corner stitch. So you can see how that should be looking. It looks kind of close together there, but be sure that you're stitching in each spot. And then when we alternate, we're working in the other spot where there was 1 double crochet, if you remember at the bottom of that little row of joins. So we can see how that should be looking there, working through that corner. It should almost make kind of like a little square, and you want to be sure to work in all of those spots. So just go ahead and continue working all the way down your row, and you're just going to repeat this for each row. So go ahead and stitch your 3rd row together and then add that onto your 2nd row, and so on and so forth. And then you are done with joining. You're just going to keep repeating this for all of your rows. And you can see how this should look all put together with all of your rows joined. It creates kind of a zigzaggy granny square pattern, and I think just really brings them all together and helps them work together really well and looks very cohesive with the other granny square stitches that we use. So that is it for the joining portion of this blanket. In the next video, I will be showing you the type of border that I do and how to stitch that. So make sure to watch out very soon for my Big Shot blanket border video, and that will be it. Then our blanket will be done. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this granny square join method, and I'll see you in the next video.